November 1953, the Hampshire House, New York City. Frank Sinatra sat in a bathtub on the 7th floor. The water was running. His hands were shaking, and on the bathroom counter within reach sat a bottle of sleeping pills and a razor blade. He was 37 years old. His career was over. His voice was damaged. Columbia Records had dropped him. MCA, his agency, had dropped him. Hollywood was done with him. His wife, Nancy, had finally divorced him. And Ava Gardner, the woman he'd destroyed everything for, had left him 6 weeks ago. The phone on the bathroom wall rang. It rang and rang. Sinatra stared at it, ice-blue eyes hollow with something beyond despair. He knew who it was. He always knew. It was Jimmy Van Heusen, his pianist and closest friend, calling because he was worried. Calling because Sinatra had been drinking for 3 days straight. Calling because earlier that night, Frank had said something that made Jimmy's blood run cold. According to witnesses who were there, Sinatra had reportedly told Jimmy, "I can't do this anymore. I'm done." What happened in that bathroom over the next 6 hours would become one of the most closely guarded secrets of Sinatra's life. But the truth, pieced together from those who were there, from hotel staff, from friends who arrived too late, reveals a man who came within minutes of ending it all. Over love, over Ava, over the woman who would obsess him for the next 37 years, even after she was gone. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like the video for your support. Thank you for subscribing. To understand how Frank Sinatra ended up in that bathtub, ready to die, you have to go back 4 years, to 1949, to the moment he first saw Ava Gardner, to the moment obsession replaced love, to the beginning of the end. Sinatra was 34 in 1949, still married to Nancy, his childhood sweetheart. 3 kids at home. Career massive. The biggest star in America. Teenage girls screaming his name. The voice. The legend. Everything a man could want. Then he met Ava at a party in Palm Springs, and everything else stopped mattering. Ava Gardner wasn't just beautiful. Beautiful didn't capture it. She was the kind of woman who walked into a room and every man forgot his own name. Green eyes, dark hair, a body that made grown men stupid, a laugh that sounded like sin, and a presence that announced, "I know exactly what I do to you." Those present at that first meeting recalled Sinatra standing frozen mid-sentence, cigarette burning unnoticed between his fingers, staring at Ava like a man who'd just seen his own destiny walk through the door wearing a red dress. Someone reportedly asked him later, "Frank, you okay?" His response, according to those who heard it, "I just met the woman I'm going to marry." He was already married. He had 3 children. His wife Nancy had supported him through everything. The hungry years, the rejection, the climb to stardom. She'd given him stability, loyalty, unconditional love. And Sinatra threw it all away for Ava Gardner in less than 6 months. The affair became public almost immediately. Sinatra didn't even try to hide it. Photographers caught them together. Gossip columns exploded. Nancy, humiliated, finally filed for separation. The Catholic Church condemned him. His teenage fans, the Bobby Soxers who'd made him famous, turned on him, calling him a homewrecker. His wholesome image shattered overnight. But Sinatra didn't care. He'd never wanted anything the way he wanted Ava. It wasn't rational. It wasn't sustainable. It was obsession disguised as love, dressed up as destiny. They married in November 1951. The wedding was small, tense. Nancy's divorce had only just been finalized. Ava wore a mauve cocktail dress. Sinatra's hands shook as he slipped the ring on her finger. Photographers captured a moment that looked more like desperation than joy. The marriage lasted officially 2 years. Emotionally, it lasted about 6 months. Because Ava Gardner was fire, and fire doesn't settle down. Fire burns through everything, consumes what it touches, and moves on. Sinatra thought he could contain her, possess her, keep her. He was wrong. Ava had her own career, bigger than his by 1952. She was making films that mattered. Critics loved her. Hollywood wanted her. She didn't need Frank Sinatra, and that drove him insane. The fights became legendary, volcanic. Neighbors called police. Hotels asked them to leave. According to witnesses, furniture flew, glasses shattered, doors slammed at 4 in the morning. Sinatra would rage. Ava would walk out. He'd beg her back. She'd return. The cycle repeated until nothing was left but wreckage. Jealousy consumed him. If Ava spoke to another man, Sinatra's jaw would clench, eyes going cold. If she laughed too hard at someone else's joke, he'd go silent for hours. If she went to a party without him, he'd call every 5 minutes until she came home. But here's the twist. Ava was jealous too. If a woman looked at Sinatra, Ava's eyes would flash. If he mentioned his ex-wife Nancy, Ava would turn to ice. They were two people who loved each other so much, they destroyed each other. Obsession meeting obsession. Neither willing to let go, neither able to stay. And then, in October 1953, while Sinatra was in New York trying to salvage what was left of his career, Ava called from Los Angeles. Those who were present when Sinatra took that call remembered hearing only his side, remembered watching his face drain of color, his hand gripping the phone until knuckles went white. In accounts given years later, witnesses claimed Ava's message was simple. "It's over, Frank. I can't do this anymore. I'm filing for separation." Sinatra begged. Those nearby could hear him. Voice breaking, pride dissolving. He reportedly said words to the effect of, "Baby, please, we can fix this. I'll change. I'll do anything." The response, according to those accounts, was silence. Then the line went dead. Ava had hung up on him, and this time, she meant it. What those witnesses didn't know yet, what nobody knew, was that Ava had been pregnant, Sinatra's baby, and she'd terminated the pregnancy without telling him until after it was done. The reasons were complicated. Her career, their toxic relationship, her fear of bringing a child into their disaster. But for Sinatra, the fact would devastate him when he learned it weeks later. In that moment, though, standing in a New York apartment with a dead phone line, all Sinatra knew was that Ava was gone. The woman he'd destroyed his marriage for. The woman he'd sacrificed his image for. The woman he loved more than breathing. Gone. The drinking started immediately. Sinatra had always drunk. Bourbon, Jack Daniels, whatever was available. But this was different. This was oblivion-seeking. Friends found him passed out at noon. He showed up to meetings disheveled, reeking of alcohol. He stopped eating. The weight dropped off his already thin frame. His career was in free fall. Columbia Records, tired of his diva behavior and declining sales, dropped him. MCA, the biggest talent agency in Hollywood, dropped him next. Without representation, without a label, without Ava, Sinatra had nothing, and his voice, the instrument that had made him famous, was damaged. Vocal hemorrhage from stress and over-singing. Doctors told him to rest. But Sinatra kept pushing, kept performing, kept trying to prove he still had something left. His voice cracked on stage. Audiences noticed. Reviews turned cruel. By late November 1953, Frank Sinatra had lost everything that defined him. His marriage to Nancy, his relationship with Ava, His record deal, his agency, his voice, his reputation. The man who'd been the biggest star in America was now the biggest cautionary tale. Friends were worried. Jimmy Van Heusen, his pianist and closest friend, had been watching the spiral with growing alarm. Hank Sanicola, his manager, was fielding calls from people who'd seen Frank drunk at 4 a.m., crying in nightclubs. Even strangers were noticing. The man who used to walk with swagger now shuffled, shoulders hunched, eyes on the ground. Everything was building toward one night. One hotel room, one bathtub, when obsession and despair would collide. When Sinatra would have to choose, keep fighting or let go. The night was November 1953. The exact date has been kept private by those who were there. A final act of loyalty to a friend in his darkest moment. Sinatra was staying at the Hampshire House on Central Park South, 7th floor, alone. He'd been drinking since morning. Bourbon. One glass became 3, became 5, became losing count. The bottle sat on the bathroom counter, mostly empty. Next to it, sleeping pills. Next to those, a razor blade. Sinatra had gathered the tools of his own destruction with the same methodical precision he'd once used to plan performances. According to accounts from those who pieced together what happened, Sinatra ran a bath, hot water, steam filling the small bathroom. He sat on the edge of the tub, cigarette burning between trembling fingers, staring at his reflection in the fogged mirror. The face looking back was a stranger, gaunt, hollow-eyed, broken. This was what losing Ava had done. This was the cost of obsession, the price of loving someone who couldn't be kept. The phone rang. Sinatra ignored it. It rang again and again. Jimmy Van Heusen calling from downtown, worried. Jimmy had been trying to reach Frank all day. On the 4th call, Sinatra picked up. His voice, those who were told later, was flat, dead, empty of everything that usually animated it. Jimmy reportedly asked, "Frank, where are you? What are you doing?" The response, according to accounts, was quiet. "I'm done, Jimmy. I can't do this anymore." Something in that voice made Jimmy's blood freeze. Years of friendship had taught him Sinatra's moods, the rage, the joy, the melancholy. But this was different. This was resignation. This was goodbye. Jimmy reportedly said words to the effect of, "Don't do anything stupid, I'm coming. Stay on the phone with me." But Sinatra had already hung up. He climbed into the bathtub, hot water up to his chest, steam thick. The sleeping pills were still on the counter. The razor blade was in his hand. Ice blue eyes stared at the ceiling, at nothing, at everything, at the ruins of a life that had once been golden. Those who later heard the story from Jimmy Van Heusen were told that Frank sat in that tub for over an hour, water going cold, razor blade in hand, thinking about Ava, always Ava, the way she laughed, the curve of her neck, the sound of her voice saying his name, the feel of her skin, the green eyes that had ruined him. He thought about calling her, one more time, begging one more time. But he knew what she'd say. He knew it was over. Some part of him had always known. You can't cage fire. You can't possess a woman like Ava Gardner. You can only burn. The razor blade touched his wrist. The pressure increased. Blood would be warm in cold water. Sleep would be easy after the pills. Ava would hear about it eventually. Would she care? Would she cry? Would she regret leaving him? That's what witnesses later said Jimmy told them. Frank was thinking about whether Ava would mourn him, whether his death would make her love him again, whether destruction was the only power he had left. The bathroom door exploded inward. Jimmy Van Heusen, who'd broken every traffic law getting to the Hampshire house, who'd bribed the front desk for a key, who'd run up 7 flights because the elevator was too slow, Jimmy kicked the door open and found his best friend sitting in a bathtub, razor blade trembling against pale wrist, eyes empty of everything but pain. What Jimmy said, according to accounts shared years later with trusted confidants, was simple. "Don't you fucking dare." Sinatra looked up, tears streaming down his face, voice breaking. "She's gone, Jimmy. She's really gone." Jimmy reportedly pulled the razor blade from Frank's hand, pulled him out of the bathtub, wrapped him in towels, and held him while he sobbed. Held him while he screamed Ava's name. Held him while the strongest, most prideful man Jimmy knew fell completely apart. They sat on the bathroom floor until dawn. Sinatra cried until he had nothing left. Jimmy didn't let go, didn't judge. Just held his friend while obsession bled out into cold tile and wet towels and the gray light of morning that meant somehow Frank had survived. When Sinatra could finally speak, his voice was hoarse, broken. He reportedly said to Jimmy, "I can't live without her." Jimmy's response, according to those who heard the story, "You're going to have to learn." And from that night on, everything changed. Not immediately, not cleanly. But something in Sinatra shifted. Maybe it was hitting bottom so hard you can't fall further. Maybe it was the realization that Ava wasn't coming back no matter what he did, not even if he died. Maybe it was Jimmy's refusal to let him quit. Whatever it was, Sinatra chose to live. The months that followed were brutal. Sinatra learned he'd been cast in From Here to Eternity, the role of Private Maggio, a supporting part he'd begged for, the role that would change everything. He'd screen-tested in July. The Hampshire House breakdown was November. The timing was cruel, hope and despair arriving together, fighting for his soul. He threw himself into the role with desperation-fueled intensity. Filming began in early 1954. Sinatra showed up on time, sober, professional. He channeled everything, the pain, the rage, the humiliation, the loneliness, into Maggio. Every scene was survival. Every take was proof he wasn't finished. When From Here to Eternity premiered in August 1953, critics were stunned. Sinatra wasn't just good, he was devastating. Raw, real, heartbreaking. The performance came from somewhere true, somewhere painful, because it was. It was every sleepless night, every call to Ava that went to voicemail, every moment he'd wanted to quit, but didn't. In March 1954, Sinatra won the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Standing on that stage, Oscar in hand, ice blue eyes bright with vindication, he'd done what everyone said was impossible. The greatest comeback in entertainment history. From bathtub with a razor blade to Oscar winner in 4 months. But that night, holding his Oscar after the parties ended and the photographers left, witnesses later said Sinatra went back to his hotel room and called Ava in Spain, where she was filming. He called and called. She didn't answer. He left a message, voice breaking, reportedly saying, "I won, baby. I wish you could have been here." Years later, Ava would tell friends she'd listened to that message a dozen times before erasing it. She'd cried. She'd been proud of him, but she didn't call back, because she knew what would happen if she did. The cycle would start again. The obsession, the destruction. Some loves you have to walk away from to survive. Sinatra kept calling anyway, for decades, and from that night in the Hampshire house on, Sinatra lived. 44 more years. He rebuilt his career bigger than before. Rat Pack, Vegas, Capitol Records, songs for swingin' lovers. Come fly with me. My way. The chairman of the board. The legend grew, but he never stopped loving Ava Gardner, never stopped calling her when he was drunk, never stopped asking, what if? Never stopped wondering if things could have been different. Friends who knew both of them would say it was the great tragedy of two lives. They loved each other impossibly, destructively, completely. But they couldn't be together without destroying each other, and they couldn't be apart without breaking their own hearts. Ava died in January 1990. Sinatra was 74. When he heard the news, witnesses said his face went blank. He walked to his study, closed the door, and stayed there for hours. Nobody disturbed him. Everyone knew. He was saying goodbye to the woman who'd defined him, the obsession that had nearly killed him, the love that survived everything, even death. When Barbara, his wife, came to check on him, she found him sitting in the dark, holding a photo of Ava from the 1950s, the face that had launched 1,000 sleepless nights, the woman who'd saved him and destroyed him simultaneously. Barbara reportedly asked gently, "Frank, are you okay?" His response, voice thick, "I never stopped loving her, Barbara. Not for one day, not for 1 hour." Barbara, to her credit, understood. She'd always known. Everyone who loved Sinatra knew. Ava was the one, the only one. The ghost he carried until his own death 8 years later. The Hampshire house still stands on Central Park South, the 7th floor. Room numbers have changed, but the building remembers. Hotel staff who worked there in the 1950s would whisper about that night, about the famous singer, the broken bathroom door, the friend who saved his life. Sinatra never publicly spoke about the Hampshire house incident. Too private, too painful, too close to the truth of who he really was beneath the swagger and the legend. But Jimmy Van Heusen carried it with him always. He'd tell the story, rarely, carefully, only to those who needed to understand what Frank had survived. He'd tell it to show that even legends break. Even the strongest men need someone to pull them from the bathtub. Even Frank Sinatra, at his absolute lowest, with a razor blade and nothing left to lose, chose to live. Because of friendship. Because of that one role waiting. Because somewhere beneath the obsession and the despair, Sinatra still believed he had more to give. More music, more fight, more life. He was right. The comeback was complete. The legend was reborn. But the wound, the Ava wound, that never healed. It just learned to beat around the damage. Some hearts don't recover. They just keep going, broken and beautiful, until they finally stop. Sinatra lived 37 years after Ava left him. He called her drunk at 3 a.m. for most of those years. He loved other women, married twice more, had friendships, triumphs, moments of genuine happiness. But at night, alone, when the bourbon hit just right and the music played just wrong, it was always Ava. Always the woman who'd almost killed him. Always the love that survived everything, even the man who carried it. Some loves you survive, others survive you. For Frank Sinatra, Ava Gardner was both.